It's happened. Is that it? Looks like it. Not noticed a change in performance, but it's been making a noise, and this is what it was. Here's what you're going to need: 2 18mm ratchets, a breaker bar, a torque wrench, a 17mm socket for the wheel bolts, and preferably 2 trolley jacks. Spanners will also work, but ratchets are easier. Your torque wrench must be capable of 90 and 120 Nm of torque. Here's the OE spring part number and the one-time use control arm nut and bolt. I would also recommend using a Sharpie for marking the 90 degree and a screwdriver for removing broken spring parts. Okay, so as I mentioned, my spring's broken at the bottom. I'm going to be replacing that. Got the jack positioned. It's still sat on the floor just so I can break the lug bolts loose. It's just got it sat on the pinch weld here because that's the jacking point, and I'll be putting my jack stand there as well. Use a bit of cardboard on it to protect it as well. Here's everything I'm going to be installing. So I've got my Brembo discs, my sack springs and my matching Brembo pads. I actually didn't get around to doing the brakes myself because they were so crusted on and I was running out of daylight, but this is something I can do myself next time. I don't know why I've never noticed this before, but my rear calipers here are silver. They should be red, which indicates to me that these have been changed at some point, like swapped out for ones off a Passat or something. I also have, because we'll be doing the spring, these are one-time use bolts. These connect the lower wishbone to the hub, as you can just see down there. One time use. It comes with a bit of thread lock in the ends of these nuts. Alright, so I've got the wheel off and I've just got this trolley jack still here. It's on the pinch weld, but as you can see, the pinch weld, it's too short to get my jack on there as well, so I've just got it seated underneath for just in case on the chassis rails, which isn't the strongest part, but it'll save the car from falling. So I will need a second jack to be able to get underneath this strut to support it. What you want to do next is you want to support this with another jack. Trolley jack's better, but you can use scissor jack. And you want to take up the slack just so that obviously when you undo this bolt you don't want it to fly out. And you just want, I've got 2 18s here, 2 18mm sockets on ratchets. I use the breaker bar to slacken it off because it will be tight. It's got to be 90 Nm plus 90 degrees. So you want to break it from this side, so towards the rear, because you can't get in on the other side because you have another link in the way. That's where you want to be, and you can't get there because of that. So just something to remember. Once you undone the nut on one side, it should come out enough that you can just pull the rest out. Obviously make sure it's bearing the weight, otherwise this will go crashing to the ground. Okay, so my jack's off, and as you can see, it's disconnected from the hub, this wishbone, so it's literally just a case of just pulling the spring out. It's quite hard one-handed. Push it down and it should come straight out. There's a little rubber seat here, just pop that off. If there's any crud on it, get rid of that as well. As you can see, I didn't know this, but the bottom of this spring's broken too. That's no good. And as you can see, there's other places on the spring where it's been damaged, and if I didn't do this now, it probably would eventually find weak points of stress along the spring and snap anyway. This is the springs I went for. You buy them in pairs because you're supposed to do both sides at once. So if you're replacing one spring, you do the spring for both axles. This is the OEM supplied spring for the Mk5 Golf GTI, just the normal one. This is the part number for it, 994632. Comparison of the old and new spring. Obviously they're virtually identical, the same height, but there's a part missing at the bottom. With the rubber seat on, that locates onto that little bump there, and it also needs to sit in here. I've got a piece of spring in here that's stuck. Right, I managed to pry it out. It was properly wedged in there, and I'll show you what I was on about. So you have to give this a good clean out because it'll be full of grime like mine is. But you get these are little lugs here, these little like ears, rubber ears, and a little bump stop for the end of the spring that wants to seat in there. You can take this off, and there's a little, this little rubber bit here, you can use that and push it out. But I'm just going to refit it as it is, sat in there. And installation is just the reverse of fitting, so just pull this down. And there we go. I'm going to have to wrestle with this to get it seated, or I want to, and I'll show you what that looks like. This is it now, and as you can see, it's not the bump stop. It's way over there, and the end of the spring's there, so I'll give it a wrestle and show you what it should look like. Reattaching the wishbone is pretty much the reverse of taking it off, so you take up the slack till the holes match up, put your bolt in and the lock and wheel nut, and then you tighten it in and use your torque wrench, and it wants to be, I've reset mine to 0 now, but it wants to be 90 Newton meters plus 90 degrees turn. And the best way to do that, I had my scissors with me, I didn't have a pen, but I marked, see that little silver scratch, and there's like a matching one down here. I used those scratches for that V letter there, or is it A, I can't tell from here, but basically marked where 90 degrees approximately is, and then did that. Make sure you turn just the bolt though, not the nut, if you're going to do that. When you're putting your wheel on, the best technique I've found is to use your legs like this to lift it up into place and get one lug nut, preferably the top one, in place first. You want to get your torque wrench again when you've got your wheel on, 120 Newton meters on all 5 in a diagonal pattern, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let some pressure off the jack as well, because you don't want to be freewheeling, otherwise you won't get any torque. Here's what's left over. So we have both broken springs and both bolts that are, as I said earlier, one-time use bolts, so we swap them out too. Car sits a little bit high this side because I've not taken it for like a run around yet. But the other side settled a bit more. It'll take maybe a few hundred miles for it to settle properly, but there it is. How cool is that?